And this is day 10 of Donald Trump's criminal trial. The witnesses, the receipts. Today, prosecutors began by actually arguing that the defendant should be held in contempt again for new, fresh gag order violations, even after he lost the last gag order clash on Tuesday. Prosecution looking at statements that Trump put out about witnesses, as well as attacking the jury itself. Prosecutors say Trump's violations are corrosive to the fair trial that he deserves and that the system requires. They also accuse him of creating an air of menace that could affect these jurors, also denouncing persistent and escalating rhetoric. Now, the judge found that Trump lost his previous defense about this, ruling that he did violate the gag order, fining him about $9,000, and that was just this week. Now, Trump has clearly broken the rules. I say that, again, not as a criticism, but based on what we have observed in the trial, what the judge has ruled. Here he was just last night.
I don't think there's ever been a more conflicted judge. Crooked and conflicted. And I'm unconstitutionally gagged. He gagged me. So I'm not even supposed to be, I would say, talking to you because he gagged me.
Trump there trying to play up the gagging, while, of course, the very speaking he's doing about the trial would suggest he doesn't seem all that gagged. That's the reality component. Then there's the legal component. The judge today told Trump's lawyer, nobody forced your client to speak, to which the Trump defense lawyer said, I agree with that, but he's running for president. He has to be able to go speak. So this was the back and forth, and this is what we have covered before, the unusual challenges of a defendant/candidate. Now, Trump was apparently displeased with his own lawyer, shaking his head at the exchange. The judge has not yet ruled on this particular instance, but he did say as recently as Tuesday that there could be jail as a punishment if there are enough violations. The prosecution then went back to the case at hand, the questioning of a key witness, the lawyer for some of the women involved in this, Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. That is Keith Davidson. Now, he helped broker the original secret payments to keep things secret, the NDAs. Now, they have had their history with Trump, and that is part of the trial, although that history itself is not what creates the crime. It is whether there was business fraud and a campaign cover-up of those deals. So this witness, Davidson, recounted his experience with then-Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, confirming Cohen was working directly for Trump, that this wasn't some made-up side deal, which is one of the ways the Trump defense team has tried to sow doubt about Cohen. No, what you had on the stand again today and what this jury was listening to was confirmation of the storyline, which is damning for Trump, and that's before Cohen ever takes the stand. The whole plot? Burying these stories because there was an election coming in November 16. Now, remember, the Wall Street Journal did get the catch and kill agreement with McDougal, the former Playboy playmate who you see there on the screen. This was a big story. This was in Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. And very few people could try to dismiss it as fake news. Here you have the legal version of that reporting, with Davidson, the lawyer who did the deal, saying that Cohen was, quote, very upset that all of that went down in close proximity to the election of 2016. Now, why does that matter? This is, again, why it's more than a fraud. The burden on the prosecution is getting that other crime I've told you about it, and we've had just last night lawyers on who talked about whether that's going to be an uphill battle, but it's that campaign crime. And so the evidence there is bad for Trump, even if it sounds obvious. If you follow the news, you may know about all this. You may know he tried to bury it, and of course it was related to the campaign. But memories aren't good enough at a trial. The only thing that people are supposed to consider is the evidence. So your personal memory of living through the 2016 campaign, if you were a juror, would not be what you use. You can only use the evidence presented. And I will tell you, this has been an effective couple of days for the prosecution because they don't look biased. They don't look like they're reaching. They are literally using Trump and his lawyer and the people around them and their contemporaneous statements at the time to continue to establish and reestablish what appears to be a basic fact, that the campaign was what motivated this. Now, Trump did win that election. He didn't get more votes, but this is, again, a country with the rule of law. And under our laws, we have this thing called the Electoral College, where even though he got less total votes, he won the Electoral College. He won in the states that, as you know, made him president. Davidson testifies that he thought the catch and kill scheme was key to what we know was a narrow result. It was that night that Davidson texted, what have we done, to the Inquirer chief, and they respond, oh my God. Davidson said there was an understanding our activities may have assisted the campaign of Trump. Davidson also described today a despondent Michael Cohen after the election, because Cohen did more than most people around Trump and did some of the dirty work that other people didn't want to do, and yet he was offered nothing. Not a social secretary job, not a junior PR job, not an assistant to the press secretary job, to say nothing of DOJ or other powerful posts that he might have had in his mind. He got zero. Now, this is interesting because, again, when you're doing a trial, you have to deal with all the evidence, not just the evidence that's good for your side. And this is something that we may see Trump's defense lawyers seize on. The idea that Cohen was so mad, so upset about a whole range of things, the one I'm about to show you, but also his later incarceration, that maybe that has clouded how he describes what happened with Trump. So here's that testimony. Cohen told Davidson, according to this testimony today, I can't believe I'm not going to Washington. I've saved that guy's blank so many times. And then there was a cross-exam, and this was more tense today, according to people in the room. We have the words. We report on that. I was there Tuesday. Our colleagues are there today. And what was described as a tense and escalating moment was Trump's defense attorneys trying to say, well, maybe this guy, this supposed witness who I've just told you is confirming things, and the texts do suggest accuracy, but they suggested that he is a, quote, serial extorter who shook down celebrities. That's all Keith Davidson is about, and how can you trust someone like that, as the Times described the depiction. Now, for the first time, the jury also heard Michael Cohen's voice, prosecutors playing these recordings that at the time were secret, that turned out to be quite interesting, and now turned out to be criminal evidence. Donald Trump could lose this case. He could be convicted. He could be sentenced to jail. He could have a mistrial. He could be acquitted. We don't know what's going to happen. But we can fairly say that the type of conversations he had were so bad that they've become criminal evidence. That's quite something for a former president. Here's one from 2018, who was president at the time. As Cohen told Davidson, I can't even tell you how many times he said, you know, I hate the fact that we did it. And my comment to him was what every person you spoke to said it was the right thing to do. The he being Trump, and the thing being these payments. Now, this corroborates what I've told you the DA needs to prove, that Trump was in on this. Now, you might be so accustomed to hearing Donald Trump spin and lie and the people around him spin and lie that you might say, who even cares that they were saying whether they should or shouldn't do it, right? That's not the point. The point is that at the time then, not later when Cohen ran into his further legal problems, but then, while Donald Trump was President Trump, Michael Cohen was privately saying a part of the story that's bad for Trump then, and he's saying the same thing now, 4 years later, that it was Trump in on it. Not that Cohen concocted that story later to get at his old boss, who he is angry with, but that at the time it was true then, and it was discussed then with the guy on the other part of that transaction. So that's bad for defendant Trump. Now, we've heard this recording, but it was played in court for the very first time today. Cohen and Trump discussing that initial payment that was arranged for the former Playboy playmate, Karen McDougal, in 2016.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David. I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be...
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
I'll pay the kid.
No.
There are tapes. The tapes are bad. In this case, Michael Cohen apparently made the tape because he thought it would help him protect himself, especially as he had to scramble so much even to get his client to get this deal that then his client didn't want to pay for in real time. And the payment is not just about being cheap or being lazy or any other pejorative term someone might come up with. The initial instinct by then President Trump, or candidate Trump, then later president in the cover-up, was pay with cash, cover it up. We don't want anyone to know about this. And that's a problem for the Trump defense because they keep saying it's all legal. NDAs are legal. And it's true. There are many different ways you can structure an NDA between two private parties, between your former employer, all sorts of ways that is legal. But if it was so legal and it was so okay, why, beyond signing it, were they so intent on covering it up? Does that go against the reasonable doubt the Trump's defense team is trying to conjure that, hey, maybe Cohen went rogue, or maybe this is all out of control, or maybe this didn't really happen the way they said.